the MN Viking Zombies YouTube and Twitch channel. My name is Kyle Smith. I love being a guest on this show. We are going to do horror movie reviews. And I know it's been a little bit, but we are back and we are here to talk about the film X. Recently released in theaters. But here's the man of the hour, Adam Carlson. What's up, man?
Yeah, this movie right now, it's now available on Vudu and Amazon Prime to rent. I think it's still about $20 to rent, so it's a little bit of an investment right now if you want to hold off and take a look later when it's cheaper. I understand, but we're going to tell you whether or not we liked it. That's our plan today.
We were talking about that last night on our football podcasts, and I think there's a premium. I think in our day and age that people are used to paying a little more for things. I don't know. It's just a feeling that I get. I know some people are still weird about COVID, which is rational and logical. I wouldn't want to pay $20 to sit at home and rent a movie. I would rather own it for that price. But, you know, if Amazon offers it and you don't want to leave, you can see something that's been released in the theater. So it's just cool to think about. Like you and I, we're not that far apart in age. I remember you would hear about a movie on the radio or you would see it in a preview of a movie you recently bought on VHS. And you would anticipate when it would come out. If you drove by the theater or went to the local mall, you would see a poster. And now you could just get online, 3 clicks later, it's uploaded and ready for you and ready to go. So,
well, the difference here is that for you and I, we don't have a big family or a large audience where going to the movies for a night would run you $80 for tickets and popcorn. You know, I'm a single guy. I don't know your status right now. I'm not gonna assume.
I am very single as well.
It's $20, you know, down just for me to watch it. And for me, that's tough to put down. But I'm going to give a little bit of a spoiler and say I did enjoy this a little bit more than I thought I would. And I will probably end up maybe buying it, a physical copy. I haven't bought a physical copy of movies in a while. But lately, a lot of the horror movies that I've seen have been kind of disappointing. The new Texas Chainsaw Massacre left something to be desired. I didn't care for the new Scream at all whatsoever. And it's like, I wanted something, anything. And I got a kind of fun movie that we haven't reviewed yet, which was Studio 666, which we might end up talking about. Because that was another movie that was quite interesting. But I feel like horror has been lacking in some ways. And this movie brought out the lover of the inner slasher, old school slasher movies for me. And it just hit the right spot, but it had like a nice modern twist to it in a way that made it feel really unique, I guess is the right word, because I don't want to jump into spoilers, but I'm going to talk about the one thing that really got me going in this movie. And it was the fact that the main killer in this movie, spoilers, if you haven't watched, this is your time, hit pause, stop, come back after you've seen it, is an old woman who her whole motivation is that she just wants to be physically loved.
Mm-hmm.
And that hit me really early, right away. I felt so sorry for this lady. And that took a real big turn. And it just absolutely ended up being a fun little slasher movie that I enjoyed a lot.
I was very, very thrilled at the end of this movie. This is probably going to be the highest grade thus far that you and I have done movie reviews for me. There's a familiarity with the characters. One of the female actresses here, where is she at? Jenna Ortega. She was in the recent Scream, which I enjoyed. No, I'm sorry. No, it's Jenna Ortega. And then we also have Brittany Snow, which I'm a fan of hers. You guys know her from
I've seen some of her stuff too as well, yeah. I don't know her from that. I know her from Would You Rather, and that was quite good.
It was a lot of fun. What I like to start this out is this is a movie set back in the 60s or the 70s. I think the 70s era.
Did it take you a second to like see if I paused it for a second? Like, did I get the right movie?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I made sure before when I was finding my way to this movie, which I will leave unnamed of how I saw that today. I've had to make sure it said 2022 beside of it, because there's another, even when I typed in IMDb to get the credits here, 2011, there was an X. But they do a good job of setting the scene, even with the cinematography and the film they use to shoot this and make it feel like you're back in the olden days. Now,
Right.
the thing that really jumped into me, if you guys haven't watched this channel before, I give all the credit to Adam in the world. He is well versed in the horror genre. I am fairly new. I got your basics down, that you would know the major ones. Hit a couple here and there because he and Kyle from our football podcast have given me some good suggestions. But I immediately, when I see this old house in the middle of nowhere and I see the sheriff, I think of Texas Chainsaw. And while the plot may not be the same, it gives me that feeling because in this movie, they did a great job, much like The Conjuring, which is my favorite horror movie, of a slow build. But it's not so slow that it doesn't keep you captivated. Not once did I fast forward. I was intrigued by the cast is great. The casting was wonderful, I thought. But I just love the cinematography of this movie. It feels like you're in 1975.
Yeah, they did a fantastic job with all that. The way that everything felt, the times, how a lot of it was, the music, the drugs, the disco. And of course, the theme of this movie was they were heading out to this old farmhouse to make an adult movie. And the cinematographer, I guess, for the film, he had some ideas about how he wanted to make a classier adult movie, one that people would relate to in a better way and be more emotional than just graphic. And he brought his girlfriend out there who decided she wanted to try, and that just absolutely hurt him in a big way. And that was hard to watch in some ways because he wouldn't just tell her. Yeah. And I was just sitting there, I was looking at the screen, like, come on, just tell her, hey, I don't feel comfortable you doing this. And the fact that he sat there and filmed the whole thing, yeah.
That's another thing I love about this movie. There's conviction in this movie. There is the question on fate. There's the question on humanity. There's a question on morality. They are very much giving you a good argument on why making a dirty movie is okay, while giving into your physical desires is all right. And this is a young group of people in their 20s and 30s. They're just trying to make it big. Here we talk about Mia Goth as Maxine. She's the main character in the movie. She has the X factor. And we talk about that early on, and then throughout they say, you're special. And she says it out loud. She says, I want to be famous. I want to get out of here. I want that lifestyle. You have some other supporting characters in Brittany Snow, and then eventually with Jenna Ortega, who all want to join in for this. They want to make this classier, like you said, adult film. And they really do think it's going to revolutionize the adult industry. And you get that feeling early on. But the problem is, as we see in a lot of these movies, and now that I think about it, saying it out loud, this has a lot of Texas Chainsaw-esque moments. You wander to a house, there's an older person there. They definitely give you weird, creepy vibes. And they say, hey, look, we talked on the phone the other day. He's holding the guy at gunpoint. It's to start. And you're like, right there, I'm like, any logical person's probably going to be like, we're going to find a motel. This is just not going to work. I'm not getting a good sense here. But, yeah, it's really good. And I also want to shout this out, too. I said this was a slow burn earlier. I don't know if you're a fan of or if you watch the other channel, the Dead Meat podcast. I love the kill count. I love watching that. It's a good way to recap some of my old favorites. If you want to go on average for how many people die versus when someone actually gets killed in this movie, they just far apart. You're not going to get a kill until at least halfway through the film. And I really appreciate that in this particular film in a slasher because it gives the character development that you want. And you kind of need for this because each individual person in this movie has their own subtle nuance that they bring to the film. And I really, really like that. And we got some YouTube dirty stuff on here. It's fitting the theme for this movie. Thank you.
We really did.
All these emojis here.
Now we're talking about that first kill in this movie. And if I remember right, that was the one in front of the van, right?
Yeah, super creepy, super slow kill. And it was very in-depth. I would give that probably one of my favorites of the movie.
Now, after watching that old woman get rejected by her husband and, kind of reminisce and interact with the other girl that she saw a younger version of herself, attractive and everything like that, she made a little bit of move on that guy in front of the van, and it was not reciprocated. And it seemed like she really struggled to accept that.
Yeah. Before
she made her twisty turn and just stabbed the guy in the neck over and over and over and over and over and over.
I love the subtleness too of you have an old van, the lights are on. I've said this before on this show. I don't do little girls and women in white dresses. Wouldn't you know it? It's an old creepy woman in a white dress, and I hate it so much. It freaks me out every time. But I love that they do that sudden pan. It's the shocking kind of jump scare. He gets out, tries to rationalize. She makes the advance, like you said. And once he gets stabbed in the neck here, she keeps going over and over. And you can feel the anger and the pain from the rejection. But I love it. I know you noticed this. It wasn't hard to see, but the blood splatters and it keeps going and going. And then the hue of all the lighting out there is red. And I thought that was really cool. It's a really subtle, small thing you can do, but it sets the tone for what's to come because you're about halfway in the movie. This is your first kill. It's brutal. And then it doesn't get any better from there. I mean, it's only going to get worse for these people. So
it had that nice
it was really good.
late 70s, early 80s mentality with the blood splashes, which if you watched horror back in the day, that was a major thing. Kind of, not a lot of the high budget main release horror movies have taken on that kind of approach to horror in a lot of ways. So it was kind of refreshing to see that.
Yeah.
Because it felt, it like it set the tone, and with the setting established and the characters developed, and now you're getting some of these nice little feelings that are not only nods to the era itself, but to the filmmaking of the time. It felt so nice. And the setting out on the farm was so remote that you did feel like there was nothing they could do. And with no cell phones and things like that at the time, this is the era of horror that you can set that all up and make things have like a bigger payoff. Because a lot of the times in this movie, the things that weren't the scariest or the creepiest weren't things that had to do with the kills and the deaths. It was like the old woman running her hand down the woman's side or sneaking into bed with the other lady. It was stuff like that made this movie feel really awkward. And of course, there were awkward scenes involving some of the nudity and things like that, because there's old person nudity in this one, if you're into that. So there's also some sex scenes, but honestly, the scenes involving the older couple and the man and the woman separately, I feel like those overpowered any of the sex scenes that were supposed to be included in the adult movie that they were shooting. Those were all kind of tame Cinemax style, intercourse scenes that these days would be like, not very, I won't say popular, but not considered to be very risque or anything like that. It'd be something you'd see on HBO at 10 p.m.,
Oh, my 14-year-old self remembers that vividly. It's hilarious. And if I was back then, seeing Brittany Snow get nude in this film, I would be through the roof. I can't say I was against it here either, but it was funny because you're talking about the old couple in this movie, right? I think you and I can both agree. You could clearly see these were younger people with like prosthetics over. I can hear with the voice. This was definitely a younger person playing this role with makeup and effects. But man, they set the tone because early on in the movie, the main character, I have it here from IMDb, Mia Goth, was Maxine. She's wandering by herself while they're shooting a part of the movie in the spare house where this is all going down. She goes out and she wanders to have a cigarette next to the lake, not knowing that another element to this movie, which I really enjoyed, was nature taking its toll. There's a gator out in the pond or the lake there, which you don't think about in a lot of these movies, which is terrifying. It's a terrible way to die, which isn't what ends up happening later. But you can see off in the distance in a blurred background, kind of like you can see my hand right now. If I move it back too far, you can see the silhouette of the old woman. This is the first introduction you get to this woman in the movie. I love that so much. It builds tension. It's perfect for this style of film. And you don't get to see her face yet, but you can see this figure in the back. And that mysterious, presence or whatever, that'll draw you in real quick. Like, oh, man, get out of there, get out of there. But you have to keep watching. But moving forward with the film, they want to shoot this film. End up having 2 different scenes, which ends up going into 3 scenes when the microphone girl, who's very, very reserved, kind of Christian, they talk her into it and having a conversation, which is wild. After they've shot for the day, she says, I don't know why you could be okay with your soon-to-be wife, sleeping with another person. To which I thought was really funny. He goes, "Yeah, if as long as it's on camera, who cares?" I don't know how you would differentiate between that. I certainly would have an issue with that, but they end up talking this innocent girl into doing a scene, and it just adds all these layers and complexities to this movie of I'm just trying to wrap my brain around what they're feeling as if I were there. Meanwhile, you don't know that there's an older couple stalking you. That's what this movie was a stalking film.
Well,
And
this
it
whole
was
movie
terrifying.
was a chain reaction. If she hadn't made that decision to be in that film, they probably all still would have been in the cabin. The one guy probably would have had gotten in the van and tried to leave. Then they would have probably not have gone and tried to look for him. Everything that happened in this movie stemmed based on that one decision, like dominoes. Yeah. And it was really an interesting way to look at this horror movie, because most of the times they are kind of, slasher movies are generic in some ways. It's just, oh, here's a big bad and they're killing everyone. Not only did this killer have motivation, but it was like fed to the killer in a lot of ways.
Yep, it was certainly, you could tell this wasn't the first time. And we saw that in the end, because I don't know, and I have to ask you if you remember, but when we have Jenna Ortega going down in the basement to help the old man out, and he was walking her in there, the person who's killed in there, is that a different person?
I thought that was the guy from the driveway.
Okay. Because I know later...
because he was stripped naked and hung up, and I'm assuming the woman was... The old lady was... I don't want to assume what they're doing, but I'm assuming it was something weird.
Yeah, very weird. Well, the only reason I asked, I thought it was someone different, because Mia, the main character here, the X Factor, goes out in the driveway to leave at the end, and there she sees him. And I was like, oh, I didn't know who this person was. I figured this couple had been doing this for a while. And back to
that's a fair question, yeah, because now I remember that too.
They've done this before, I believe. That's my synopsis of it. And to your point, the human element to feel bad for these people who are murderous and stalkers and all this is, you said it wonderfully. She yearned to be young again, and we all like that's the whole ominous tone of the movie. We're all going to get old.
My heart sunk for her when she got rejected.
Yeah, and I know there's a really, well, if you're a younger person, you're probably going to think it's a grosser scene when the old couple ends up having sex. But they end up trying to rekindle the spark, and she just lays it out, said, this is how I feel, this is what I want. She's been rejected all this time. You can see that she wants to be young again and wants to be that person because she saw the main character in herself, in previous years. There's a lot of resentment in this movie too, especially towards Brittany Snow and how she ended up getting killed. But yeah, I felt the human element of, we're all going to get old and wrinkly and eventually pass away. And you felt bad for the loneliness and the isolation she felt because, like you said, not only the loneliness and isolation between herself and her relationship, but they are physically and geographically, like, they're in the middle of nowhere. They don't have anything.
Didn't hammer that in the way a lot of horror movies do. A lot of horror movies recently take the main point and just keep hammering it and hammering it and hammering it until at the very end you're like, okay, I get it. And here, aside from the clues from the story and the conversation on the dock between the old woman and the blonde lady, it wasn't a main topic of the movie, even though it was such a central theme. And I feel like being able to do that in an unspoken way, especially till that point in the movie, was so refreshing.
It was very refreshing. And I also love, too, I have to hammer this home just because I'm seeing it here now. The casting in this movie is great. The main character, the male character, the white guy, he's kind of the, I guess would be the producer of it all and kind of the money man. And he's going to have his name stamped on this film. Martin Henderson plays Wayne. He's a typical fit you kind of love to hate him kind of guy.
Yeah.
Kind of love to hate, but I didn't know this until looking at the credits. Jackson, the African-American guy, is Kid Cudi, the rapper. I knew his face from somewhere. I had no idea that was him. So shout out to him making his, what I think is his big screen debut. That's awesome. I was just listening to his music the other day.
Wasn't he in Bill and Ted, the third one?
I didn't see it.
What?
I was trying to keep my heart away from that film so it wouldn't get broken.
I enjoyed it.
Oh well, if you say it's recommended, that's great. It's kind of like when I saw Dumb and Dumber 2, I was like, oh
Oh
god, this is
no,
gonna be
no.
so bad.
That's what
Just
happened with me and Zoolander too. So I get what you're saying.
they're gonna make my favorite comedies, Wedding Crashers, and they've signed off for Wedding Crashers 2, and I'm already mad to watch it because I know it's not gonna be good. But
The bad
I
part about
digress.
this movie is that I don't think there will be any sort of sequel or spin-off because this movie does end with that nice little bow on it to
It
where there
does.
isn't really much left to tell of the story at all. But there was another major twist in this movie at the end where the woman, I think the old lady realized that the one girl was repeating a lot of stuff the preacher said on TV. And in the end, it was revealed that the woman was the preacher's daughter.
Oh yeah.
And I know that that's kind of a stereotype, the preacher's daughter doing the porn film and stuff like that, but I don't know if that was necessary for the movie, but it was an okay touch.
You know, I agree. They didn't have to put that in there, but I thought it added a little extra spice to it. And while I'm thinking about it out loud, this film certainly wasn't grimy. You didn't feel gross like you needed a shower afterwards for just the overall theme. But man, from the Texas Chainsaw stuff that I see a little bit of like memory and flashback to, this also had like a Rob Zombie twist to the
Some of the grossest stuff in this movie wasn't the kills either. It was like
right.
when the guy stepped on the nail. I felt that. That hurts.
Oh,
I've done that. I've stepped on a nail, and that's not great.
It's not good.
And then you've got the woman when she was reaching for the lock on the door, and she got hacked with the axe, and her hand, you could see like the where it was all cut up. They did a fantastic job on those scenes.
Yeah, this is definitely more realistic. Obviously, there's stuff that's going to be more Hollywood and a little over exaggerated, but this is a very realistic film as far as the kills and the pain, just the life lessons in it. But I did feel, like I said, I did feel a little Rob Zombie in this film too. How, you know, he'll put in porn and dirty movies and stuff, and he'll put the religious stuff in there. He's a little blasphemous in some of his films, which is kind of where I draw the line a little bit. But that cliche of the preacher's daughter, I mean, it's cliche for a reason. I thought it was really cool that, spoiler, if you've made it this far, you know we're going to tell you, but the main character here, Mia Goth as Maxine, she's the only one who survives. Literally all. But I love the ending too, how they do this in some of these movies.
How she backed up over the old lady's head.
There are some brutal kills in this movie. They're so good. That's part of the reason I love this. They were creative, but they weren't too over the top. I think the most over the top that's probably not realistic is poor guy who stepped on the nail and gets the pitchfork in the head. You got to be really accurate with that. If we're talking about an old woman, probably not. But mostly everything else, there's gunshots, there's running over people in the head, and there's stabbings. There's a lot of crazy kills.
That gunshot just blowing her back.
I felt bad for Jenna Ortega. She's about to run away to freedom, and she just gets blasted off the porch. Brittany Snow gets eaten by an alligator. I mean, you've got everything in this movie. It's fun in the classic kind of terrible way, but if you're a horror fan, you kind of know this is coming. So
now I had not heard about this movie one bit until I saw an ad for it while I was on Twitch. And immediately, one of the first things I did was I went and posted it in our group chat with the podcast guys, and I was like, this looks pretty interesting. And Smith, it didn't take Smith long before he replied, and he's like, yep, I want to see that. So not only did they execute well with a great product, but they handled it in a way that the advertisement was appealing and was able to draw people in. So if you saw an ad for this, you have to let us know what you thought, because for me, they did a fantastic job. But the one thing I would like to see stop in a lot of these horror movies is in advertising and promotional material, stop giving away who the final girl is. I know final girl is a trope in a lot of horror movies, and it's a fantastic thing that's worked for, 50 years now, at least? But these days it's so manufactured and so stuck that even the movie poster gives away who's going to survive. And to me, that's kind of disappointing. I would like to have a little bit more of a mystery.
Yeah, leave a little bit for the mind to wander a little bit. Or You could do like they did with Scream. I know you didn't like the last Scream, but I liked that they put everyone in the cast in the poster. I don't know who's going to be the killer in that movie, but I can see, okay, cool. Like if you knew I know Kid Cudi from his album, but I could see him on there. I could see Jenna Ortega. I'm like, oh, I remember her from Scream. I remember Brittany Stowe. I've seen Mia Goth somewhere else. I could see everyone and understand, but I'm with you. That's a very good point I didn't think about. You don't have to give it away, man. Let the mind wander a little bit. That's the whole point of getting me to spend my money on this film.
I did like that they didn't give away the killers, because going into it, I had no idea.
Yep.
And when I was sitting there watching this, feeling so much sympathy for that old woman, then to see her doing what she's doing, it made me feel really conflicted inside.
Yeah. It's one of those where you say, I'm not saying what you did was right, but I understand.
Right.
I said that a lot in my adult life. And it's mostly for people who make bad choices, but you understand that feeling if you've had that feeling before. Before we give any kind of rating or anything, I did like how Texas Chainsaw again, man. I'm telling you, it's that one particular remake where they have the cops coming in at the beginning and you see the carnage that's happened. Then they're going to tell you the story of how it began. And at the very end, Rob Zombie-esque is like, they bring the camera. They're like, I wonder what's on this. It's like probably a really fucked up horror movie. Yeah, you're right. This is pretty bad.
Yeah.
It was cool. I saw a lot of the classic horror movie stuff they paid homage to, but this is overall, man, I think this is, so far to date, this is my favorite thing that we've reviewed. At least I'll probably give it the highest rating that we've had for sure.
Yeah, I felt the same way when it opened up with the police and checking out that scene, and then when it ended with the police and just at the same spot, that little loop felt real nice.
And there's ways in horror films, and not just horror, action, comedy, drama, whatever. There's ways you can do this where it feels manufactured and scripted and rehearsed and forced, especially like you were hinting to earlier, where they hit the theme 17 times in the movie. You're like, I get it. I understand. That's probably one of the reasons why you hated Scream 5 so much. They're hammering home and all that. Like, we get it. You can lay off of that pressing it so much. Like, I get that. But here they did it in a tasteful way in the end, which was fun. And it made me laugh a little bit with the dialogue. So
I believe it's safe to say that we would both recommend that horror fans check out this movie.
Yep. Give this a check, check it out, grab some popcorn, get your favorite snack. I would say come into it with an open mind, but you'll see everything that we've talked about. If you listen to this first before you watch this film, you'll see the nod to a couple of classic, horror movie cliches. But man, this was refreshing. If I had to sum this movie up in one word, it would be refreshing. And you'll enjoy it. It's a good slow burn.
There's a lot of gore. There's a lot of stuff in here that will probably make you at least a little uncomfortable while you're watching.
Oh, yeah.
And to me, those uncomfortable scenes are what stay with you after watching a movie. Yeah. Sure, you're going to be talking about the awesome kills around the water cooler at work. That's the way things always go. But if you do that and it's not in a movie where you get any sort of sense or feeling, it all just feels really disposable. And I never got that impression from this movie at all.
Yeah, not at all. And like I said, there's a certain time limit. I don't know. Maybe it's just because we love our phones and our computers and everything so much. You get a little antsy, you get a little bored, but I didn't get bored through this movie. I
didn't pick up my phone either.
I got really happy to, I wanted to get to the next moment where they reveal something or something happens, but it didn't drag on to the point where I'm losing interest. They kept my interest for the full hour and 45 minutes in this movie. It was a great one.
By the time one scene was over, it transitioned into another one nice and quick and jumped right into it. So even if you don't have a deep attention span, this movie, I think it's going to work for you.
Director and writer Ty West. Shout out to you, sir. Great casting, too. Good movie.
So here comes the grading. It's the tough one because you don't want to go too high because you don't want to put a cap on things and be like, oh, well, this is a 10, and then another movie comes along and and you liked it a little bit more, and then you're like, oh, it's a 10.2. No, that don't work that way. So I think there was a little bit of room for improvement in this film, but not much. And I want to say the highest score I've given a movie is probably around I think I gave an 8.2 once, right?
Yeah, it was somewhere around there.
So let's jump this up because I did like this one significantly more. I'll go an 8.9.
Ooh, that's high regard for this wonderful film. Well, I'm not far behind you, Adam. This is definitely our favorite one to date. We've had some clunkers, we've had some good ones. You know, there's going to be peaks and valleys doing horror movie reviews, but I'm with you, man. I'm going to give this a solid 8.4. This is a must watch if you're a horror fan. This is a highly recommend. You got to see it because you'll enjoy it, especially if you love the old slashers and the old school. You know, I love this so much. I'll definitely watch this movie again.
It was a nice throwback with some modern feel to it, with some awesome kills, uncomfortable moments. And I don't know if I've seen a better horror flick in a long, long time.
I don't think I have. You know, you can't sum it up better than that, and that's a bar that's set. What I know, whatever we watch after this is not going to get this high of a review. But
no, I mean, I watched Choose or Die on Netflix, and we won't be reviewing that because I could not stand that movie.
That's hilarious. He's immediately like, "Yeah, we're not watching that." That's great. Adam plows through more movies than I, so I know if it's not going to be, there's a certain standard we're going to review on this channel. It doesn't have to be super high, but if he says no, like it's not even worth a mention. So that's funny.
No,
I know you mentioned at the top of the show, you weren't a fan of The Scream. We don't have to review that if you don't want to. I liked it. I know you didn't, but I am very, very much on board to do Studio 666, especially with the recent passing of Taylor Hawkins with the Foo Fighters. I would love to do that next or, you know, very soon, but we'll find something else.
Yeah, we can absolutely do that.
We'll find something else too, but shout out to this movie, X. What a great film.
Came out of nowhere and it really impressed. I want to once again thank Kyle Smith for joining me. I hope we can get something like this rolling again soon. You can check him out, NC Dog Dude, on pretty much every form of social media. You can hit him up there. Hit me up, MN Viking Zombie, over on any form of social media you can probably imagine. You might be watching me on Twitch, which you're not, but that's okay. You might be checking us out on my YouTube a little bit after we went live, and that's most likely how you're watching this if you are. And I do appreciate any interaction, like shares, subscribes, whatever, you know. It all helps me want to do more of this. And to be honest, I would love to do this even more and more and more often because I love talking about horror movies with Mr. Smith here. And I know that you guys like horror movies too if you're here. So hopefully you can join us in the live chat sometime so we can talk about these movies together. And in the meantime, stay bloody.